Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. There's a lot of things that could be said about Kamala Harris in the last 24 hours alone. Her pathetic attempt to go on a CNN town hall and call herself defending her reprehensible injustice record in California, or the fact that she has a video that's come to light that you could see on my Twitter page where she's laughing and joking about sending the parents of truant children to jail. She thinks that's funny. Isn't it just creepy beyond words that you got a woman who laughs about the concept of not prosecuting people for marijuana possession when everyone knows that drug possession cases are racist as hell, that they're color-coded? If you're black, you're going to get arrested. If you're white, you won't be. If you're black, you're going to get convicted. It's going to be on your record. If you're white, they're going to give you a misdemeanor so it never winds up in your record and you do no time. She knows that. Kamala Harris knows that. Everybody knows that, but she laughed about the idea of stopping the drug war, which is nothing more than a race war on black people. So she laughs about the idea of sending the parents of truant children to prison, who are going to be overwhelmingly black women, and she laughs about the idea of no longer continuing the racist drug laws. There's something deeply sick about an individual like that, and I will address that at a later date, but tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about Kamala Harris's platonic relationship with low-down Willie Brown. Yeah, platonic. It had to be because Willie Brown said so. Well, actually, he didn't say so. All he said was that he dated Kamala Harris. That's all he said. He never denied that it was sexual. Kinda reminds me of Marcia Clark and Chris Darden. She never denied that those two were sleeping together either, and Kamala Harris doesn't deny it. She just says, I'm offended and it's sexist for you to ask me that. Yeah, you're called whatever you want, but you haven't answered the question. Were you two bumping uglies or not? And if not, man, she sure did have a lot of innocent affection for a man who wasn't giving her anything other than the pleasure of his platonic company. Now, let's get serious here. Does anyone believe that Kamala Harris's relationship with Willie Brown was platonic? This guy has been a notorious womanizer his entire adult life. That's part of the reason why his marriage fell apart. That's apparently what he wants you to think. Well, she's on her way to the White House, so I need you guys to think that she's not a slut. Being a skank would be the least of Kamala Harris's sins. The fact that she can't keep her legs closed when she thinks it's going to benefit her, that would be the least of her crimes. First of all, however, it says a lot about the immaturity and the contempt for the public that Willie Brown has, that he would have these serious accusations coming against him, and his response is, yeah, I did it, so what? Yeah, we were dating, so what? So what? Well, if this was Willie Brown's house we were talking about, and he pulled the Schwarzenegger and he was getting freaky with the maid, that would be one thing. If this was Willie Brown's social club that we were talking about, that would be one thing. If this was a business that Willie Brown owned and he was getting in some extra time with one of the female employees, that would be one thing because the taxpayers, the citizens, don't own any of those. But the mayor's office, or in his case, the assemblyman's office, that belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to him. It's not his personal sandbox. It's not his personal property. He doesn't own that at all. It's not his toy to play with, but he did. Now, the obvious dodge, especially from garbage like Bakari's sellout, that segment of the population, it will be to hide behind Bill Clinton. Well, even if those two were getting freaky with each other, Bill Clinton did it too, so it's no different than Bill Clinton. That's a lie, because what Kamala Harris and Willie Brown were doing, that was worse than Bill Clinton. Because Bill Clinton didn't give Monica Lewinsky 2 do-nothing government jobs where she was making decisions that affected people's lives as compensation for her taking dictation. Bill Clinton didn't help Monica Lewinsky become an assistant DA and then later Attorney General of Arkansas either. Bill Clinton's extramarital affair never went beyond the Oval Office. Willie Brown's affair with Kamala Harris, however, affected everyone in San Francisco and then in the entire state of California, and it didn't affect the people in a good way. Willie Brown's empty denials that he helped the careers of Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi too. Oh, I hope their political careers too. That's a joke. Did he ever date Gavin Newsom? Did he ever date Nancy Pelosi? I'll go out on a limb and say no. Here's an even better question. In 1994, Willie Brown gave his platonic girlfriend Kamala Harris a brand new 1994 BMW. He gave that to her as a gift. because they weren't doing any hanky-panky. He just really thought that she needed a gift, so he gave her a brand new BMW, which she had no problem driving around town, by the way. Say, did Willie Brown ever give Gavin Newsom a BMW? Did he ever give Nancy Pelosi a BMW? Because after all, he didn't do anything for Kamala Harris that he hadn't done for other politicians, right? So that being the case, let's give it the rundown. Let's find out if that's the case. He wasn't using her as his mistress. I mean, it's just a matter of they had a platonic relationship, and it's not like it affected the people of the city of San Francisco or the state of California, did it? Well, consider this. Besides the fact that he was giving Kamala Harris new cars, what he also did was he made sure that she got some nice cushy patronage jobs from the state. And although what these jobs paid was no joke, the amount of time that was required to do it was. The first job Willie Brown arranged for Kamala Harris was the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. Well, she didn't stay there long, and that's okay. That's not where the real money was at, because soon Willie Brown got Kamala Harris on with the State Medical Assistance Commission. So what that meant was she basically didn't have to do anything. Oh, and it was a violation of the law for her to even have those jobs. The California Medical Assistance Commission was created to help oversee the medical system there, and the law specifically stated that the 7 members of the Medical Assistance Commission board had to have experience in hospital management. It wasn't even a matter of, are you a doctor or not? Question was, do you have experience in managing a hospital, healthcare delivery systems, and healthcare insurance? Only thing that Kamala Harris had experience with, allegedly, was unemployment insurance. That ain't the same thing, folks. So the law states that before you can even get on with the Medical Assistance Commission Board, you've got to have experience. That's the law. You have to have experience in hospital management. They wrote the law that way specifically to prevent sleazy politicians like Willie Brown from giving their idiot family members or mistresses those kind of jobs. And yet in this case, the law was totally ignored. So, hey, Kamala Harris, do you have healthcare delivery systems experience? No. Healthcare insurance experience? No. Well, walk right in and get this job. No experience, no knowledge, no problem. All she had to do was attend 2 meetings a month. That's it. That's all she had to do, but apparently sticking her head in the door just 2 times a month, that was simply too grueling a schedule for Kamala Harris to keep, because she registered the highest absentee rate during her last 2 years on that panel. She missed nearly 20% of the meetings. That's how Kamala Harris spent her time there, because she was so dedicated to that job, and it meant so much to her, and it was so important to her, don't you know? But to hear Kamala Harris tell it, when she gets ready to be asked about it, well, she was putting in overtime. She was eminently qualified because, quote, I brought a level of life knowledge and common sense to the jobs. I mean, if you were asked to be on a board that regulated medical care, would you say no? That's exactly the kind of pathetic question that you'd expect to get from a lawyer who knows they're trapped. But of course, the white media never actually hems anybody in on anything, so she's allowed to get away with it. Would you be on a medical board and regulate medical care? Well, I'm not a doctor. I'm not in hospital management. I have no experience with healthcare delivery systems, and that being the case, it's against the law. So the answer is no, no, and no. Even if I was so hot and bothered to get on that particular board, I wouldn't violate the law to do it. But Kamala Harris did. Oh, but she was working so hard, right? Yeah, she was working so hard she missed nearly 20% of the meetings. That's 1 out of every 5. They only had 2 meetings a month. She said that the workload was significant. I don't see how you stick your head in the door only 2 days out of the month. I'm wondering how the hell overwhelming that workload could have possibly been, and how the hell do you miss 20% of the meetings when you only have to show up twice a month? How do you do that? Well, Kamala Harris did. That's because she knew that wasn't her real job and that nothing was going to happen to her for missing those meetings. There was never going to be any punishment because her sugar daddy, boyfriend gave her that job as a way to give her phony credentials and to compensate her for personal services rendered. Now consider this. Healthcare is a huge issue in the United States, a gigantic issue. And yet, have you noticed that Kamala Harris never brings up her board experience? You've never heard her talk about how, I was on the board of the California Medical Assistance Commission. She never tells any stories about her time on the board, never talks about the stories of the people whose lives she touched while she was there. She never talks about her time on the California Medical Insurance Commission at all. Never. She never brings those things up because she doesn't want anyone asking the questions I'm asking. When it comes time to talk about healthcare in America, she never says, I sat on the California Medical Assistance Commission. It's conceivable that she might probably have done it for one of her grandstanding antics on a Senate panel where nobody's allowed to question her and nobody knows this information, and if you did ask her, she would say, well, the workload was significant. If you were asked to be on a board that had to do with regulating medical care, would you say no? And by the way, for the trolls and clowns who might try to say, well, those laws were written to keep the layman off the board, you need people in there who are on the business end of those medical decisions. I agree, and that being the case, Kamala Harris should have been petitioning to have the law changed so that she could legally be on the board. Gee, if only Kamala Harris knew someone who was in the California legislature. If only she knew someone like, say, an assemblyman. Better yet, if only she knew the Speaker of the California Assembly, like Willie Brown. Yeah, if Kamala Harris had a relationship of some sort with Willie Brown, then she could ask him to use his position in the legislature to change the law. Gee, if only she had known someone like that. This is what Kamala Harris was doing. This is what Willie Brown did, and she got paid $100,000 a year for a job she didn't even show up for. She didn't even go into work, but that's okay. She got paid anyway because her real job was to be Willie Brown's side piece. That was Kamala Harris's job. This is what the hell she was doing. But if we question Kamala Harris's integrity or her honesty, it's because we're sexist. Bakari Sellout said so. And I'm sure that he's not desperately hoping to get a job in any future Kamala Harris administration, right? None of these shameless butt kissers for her would ever do that. But to hear Kamala Harris tell it, she made all kinds of big and important contributions to healthcare in California. She just can't tell anybody what those contributions are. She's also never actually run on these contributions as part of any of her political campaigns either. She's not a doctor. She's a lawyer, and a lousy one at that. What in God's name is she doing calling herself chiming in on healthcare? If all you need is life experience, as she put it, then I'm sure Kamala Harris would have no problem at all with doctors being allowed to chair California's Bar Association, right? I'm sure she wouldn't mind some first-year intern fresh out of medical school, someone who never even took a law class, being put on the state bar and deciding who gets their law licenses suspended and who gets disbarred. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. I'm sure Kamala Harris would be in favor of letting doctors with no legal experience be in charge of that. And all the doctors would have to say is, we have a level of life knowledge and common sense. Life knowledge and common sense. The state law in California regarding the board of the Medical Assistance Commission doesn't ask whether or not you got common sense. It doesn't require life experience either, but what it does require is hospital management experience, and health delivery systems experience, and healthcare insurance experience. That's what the law demands. So we see where Kamala Harris got her flippancy from. Clearly qualifications were not needed. Of course, this was sex for pay. What the hell else could it have been? How many 60-year-old men did Kamala Harris date before she got around to Willie Brown? How many 60-plus-year-old men has she dated afterwards? Hell, even her husband, Douglas Emhoff, isn't 60 years old yet. In fact, he's the same age as her. It's obvious that this was a quid pro quo exchange, sex for pay. She opens her legs for Willie Brown, and Willie Brown opens some doors for her. To deny this obvious pig-simple reality is to treat the public like we're stupid, and we're not. These people's attempts to make these sugar baby payoffs look like they were legitimate government decisions is laughable. It violates the law, which as a lawyer is something that she should be concerned about, but the California political machine was easily able to shield her from any legal consequences, same way they shielded her from white media scrutiny. Kamala Harris was completely and thoroughly unqualified for these high-paying positions, and if she was so hot and bothered about having something to say about the regulation of medical care in California, at the very least, why couldn't she be bothered to show up for the meetings? I mean, it was only 2 meetings a month. Only twice a month. Oh, but that grueling schedule. You want me to show up 2 days out of 30? You want me to show up 2 days a month? Oh my God, these people are slave drivers. Kamala Harris is exactly the kind of woman who makes other women look bad. Kamala Harris is why whenever a woman climbs the ladder and does so quickly, everybody immediately assumes she must have been sleeping with someone. Kamala Harris is a living example of why so many women have to put up with that perception because of the fact that the perception is often rooted in fact. That may not be across the board fact, but it is a fact, and this is a reality about the Me Too movement that nobody wants to talk about. While there's an obscene amount of powerful men who use their position to leverage sex, the truth is there's a lot more females who are only too willing to sleep their way to the top because they're lazy and have no other marketable skills. This is malfeasance. This is political high-handedness. This is everything that undermines a government and destroys its ability to function, which is exactly what happened. Willie Brown and Kamala Harris were using the taxpayer dole as their freaking personal piggy bank and putting people into positions of power who wrecked the lives of everyone that they came across, letting corrupt and racist cops be able to roam the streets and kill and assault people and rape people and rob people at will and taking innocent people and putting them behind bars, and then Kamala Harris laughs about it all because to her it's funny. She is a sadistic, sick, twisted piece of trash. So we can see why Willie Brown wants people to disregard this little episode, why he wants to try to brush it off. I'll bet he's still wondering if the statute of limitations has expired for the malfeasance he committed. Well, there may be a statute of limitations on fraud, but there's no expiration date on holding crooked politicians accountable, which is what Kamala Harris is. No, family, this ain't like Bill Clinton at all. This is much more like what Kwame Kilpatrick was doing when he was married, having an affair with one of his so-called aides, while ignoring the white supremacist economic threats to the city of Detroit that was growing until eventually the entire Detroit City Council wound up being nullified. Because, Kwame Kilpatrick had better things to do than to look out for his city. I guess he figured, they ain't gonna come after my job, but they did. They came after his job and came after his freedom. And in the end, they got both. This is what should have happened to Willie Brown. I believe that if you're going to call yourself being a bootlick for white supremacy, if you're going to leave the black community open to an attack from white supremacy, you want to play along with whatever idiot white power puts into this or that political office, they never figure out that they better shore up their position with the black community, that the black community's their only hope of avoiding a prison cell. They never figure it out. And they don't care about the black community to begin with. Name one thing Kamala or Willie Brown did that helped anyone other than themselves. Family, it is dangerous for a politician to be giving out jobs to people who aren't qualified for them, but it's disastrous when you help people like Kamala Harris gain positions where they can affect other people's lives. Kamala Harris broke the law to get a patronage job, but she refused to uphold the law to protect black Californians and to punish the police. This is why the character issue matters when it comes to government positions, because if you're an immoral, anti-black scumbag working for the DA's office, then that's not someone who should be holding public office or even working in government to begin with. Look at how much damage she did. And Willie Brown's got the nerve to say, so what? Because as part of the California Political Insiders Club, Willie Brown knows that he's off limits to prosecution. Kamala Harris has no problem kicking her boss, the former DA of San Francisco, out of his job and getting in bed, figuratively this time, with the police to do it. But there was no way she was going to go after Willie Brown because Willie Brown was going to help her climb the ladder. And while there's no honor among thieves, Brown was too connected and too influential for Kamala to call herself prosecuting him, no matter how much she felt that it might potentially benefit her. Willie Brown was too important to her future career prospects. Just another reason why Willie Brown was so eager to see Kamala Harris become DA and then Attorney General. She was insurance against prosecution. Long as she was DA of San Francisco, or long as she was the state Attorney General, then, well, only the feds could put Willie Brown in jail. He would be immune from prosecution at the state level, and because Kamala had been so willing to get on his casting couch, there's no telling what kind of inside dirt the Willie Browns got on her. That's the way it works, by the way. They don't elevate you to high office without having some real damaging stuff, just in case you ever decide to become a do-gooder like, say, Eliot Spitzer. Spitzer was part of the upper crust in New York. He was the sheriff of Wall Street, not really the sheriff, more like the security guard who gave people a rap on the knuckles every once in a while. But even that was way too much for the fat cats on Wall Street. So they decided soon as he became governor, when he reached the apex of his career, take him down. That's how it works. Kamala Harris is a political sellout in every sense of the term, and for Willie Brown to casually brush off his malfeasance and impropriety, that is unconscionable. He turned his political office into a brothel, literally, and he was selling influence and buying casual sexual favors from free-range thoughts like Kamala Harris. Black people helped to build the city of San Francisco. There would not be a city of San Francisco worth going to if black people had not built it, and yet while black people were being run out of the city wholesale by Willie Brown's buddies like Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom, and those who weren't were being incarcerated by Kamala Harris, what the hell was Willie Brown doing? He was saying, so what? That's what he was saying back in the 90s. That's what he was saying back in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s, and today. So what? So what? Family, this is the reason why we've got to be dead serious about making sure that the people who get into political office and attack us get punished. We can't let their crimes against us fall down the memory hole. And we can't let these shills, bootlicks, and sellouts run interference for them either. We've got to make it a point that we're going to make examples out of them. If you attack the black community, you will pay. Political crooks like Willie Brown chose the winners and losers of elections, and he says, so what? He has enabled this anti-black zealot Kamala Harris to get into high office, and he says, so what? Kevin Cooper had been denied a simple DNA test because Kamala Harris was willing to go to the mat to fight him in court to keep him from being able to do anything that might prove his innocence. And Willie Brown says, so what? Willie Brown ought to ask all the people whose lives were ruined by corrupt and racist cops who Kamala Harris has been protecting to go ahead and come to them and say, well, so what? Kamala Harris and Willie Brown. Just the same old shameful, demented game that's been going on for too long. This perverted woman has been a sick piece of garbage her entire life. She didn't just become perverted by the system, she was perverted before she even got into it. Kamala Harris has no morals, she has no conscience, she has no ethics. This woman will say one thing today and something else completely different tomorrow, depending on who's standing in front of her. She has no moral compass. I didn't say her moral compass is broken. I said Kamala Harris doesn't have a moral compass because she has no morality. All she has is her appetite for more and more power to feed her ego. Does she have anything else? Not really. She's just a creature of personal interest, and Willie Brown, he's cut from the same cloth. They both draw from the exact same toilet. See, it matters whether or not somebody does this kind of stuff. It matters if you got some person who's hiking up their skirt in order to try to climb the ladder. It matters because you got somebody who has no rules. They have no code, and that's dangerous for a group like the black community. That's dangerous for us because we gotta have a code of conduct. We have to have a code that there are things we do and things we don't do. And one of the things we don't do is vote for Kamala Harris. You need to make sure people understand that she was getting paid off of those government jobs. But did her corruption stop when she got to Washington? Just like Willie Brown before her, she used her position as vice president to give patronage jobs to shills and bootlicks who were shameless apologists for anti-black legislation like the '94 crime bill. This is a woman who came up through the system not based on what she knew or what she could do, but based on who she was doing. This is a woman who made her bones by sleeping with a man twice her age, not because he was a moral man or because it was true love, but because of the fact that she was trying to find the fastest way to climb the ladder, and she knew the fastest way for an unscrupulous, unaccomplished, untalented woman like herself to climb the ladder is by climbing into bed with an equally unscrupulous, unaccomplished, and untalented man. And black people are left behind. Well, no. Black people weren't left behind exactly. Kamala Harris made sure that she found every black person that she could and locked up as many as possible. That she did do. I would love to say that she forgot about the black community, but in a way I wish she had. That would have been far better than what she did. She was obsessed with the black community as it relates to incarceration. So we cannot play it lightly and allow any of the roly-poly Martins, the Bakari sellouts, or the Howard Deans, or any of these other shea butter bootlicks, or the rest of these corrupt and crumbling scumbags to make excuses for Kamala Harris and play it off as if, well, that's just the political game, you know. Just the political game? It's not a game at all. She's part of this old boys club, at least on the periphery, and here she is taking political favors in return for sex, and then turning around and using a political position that she leveraged for herself in the bedroom to attack the black community. Immorality and corruption, the two go hand in hand. A woman who has no morality when it comes to those she chooses to associate with, especially in the bedroom. This is a person who will have absolutely no morality when it comes to public office. And the same way that Willie Brown felt that his political office was his personal property, that he could do whatever he wanted with it, you saw what Kamala Harris did. She got all bold, getting all brolic on CNN, running her mouth about, I don't know why anybody's getting mad at me for what I did. I know that you guys have problems with what I did, but you know I was part of this and part of that and part of the other. Give me a break. You save it. We know exactly where Kamala Harris is, what she's always been. She is a liar and a political tool, not because I say so, but because it's been proven so. Well, Kamala Harris may not mind getting screwed, but the black community, we got a big problem with that. A huge problem with that. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Shrampstein, Matthew Liggins, Atu Hammond, DSC Bland, and Andre Evans. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.